So, Luke, do you have a favourite actor that you think would be best suited for Bond, and why is that?
Yeah, it's probably everyone will roll their eyes and get bored of it. But it's Henry Cavill. But I've wanted Henry Cavill for quite some time, even when they were announcing Craig, and Henry Cavill was mentioned. I was Team Cavill all the way. He's an awesome guy. He loves the franchise. He's a great actor, and he looks brilliant. You know, he's a good-looking guy. I think he's got elements of Connery and Brosnan in the way he looks with the hair and that. He's a little bit bulky. I think he needs to lose that a bit, but obviously he had that for Superman, which is now not anymore. The scene in Mission Impossible, you know, with him kind of loading his arms when he was having that fight in the toilet was damn good. You know, it was really, really cool. And I don't know if you've seen his, I think it's by Tonics or something. He's like an ambassador for a water brand or something now. And he'd done this brilliant advert where he was in Huntsman in Savile Row, which was the same suit tailor shop as Kingsman. And he walks out and he says, it's something like, and for your next adventure or something like that. And he looks down, there's like an Aston Martin DB5 parked right in front of him. I think he'd be great, but I also have quite a radical idea of where I'd want the films to go moving forward if he was selected. Which people would probably get quite irate about, or maybe they wouldn't. I don't know. But yeah, I would love Henry Cavill. Taylor Johnson or Aaron? Yeah, I think it's Aaron Taylor Johnson. He'd be quite good. I've seen a few fake photos of him mocked up as Bond, so he could be quite good. I think that Barbara says she's looking for someone for a 10-year stretch that's younger that can last. So I think Cavill at 40 now, I think he might be just on the cusp of not getting it, unfortunately. But who knows? We will see. We will see.
Yeah, I was going to say Cavill's pushing 40 or 40 already, so it might be a short run. We've got to put your theory to the test. Let's get let's get the listeners irate. Where do you want the Bond franchise to go next?
Well, it's not a lady, so that's fine. I would love to see, if my ideal thing, I would pick up Henry Cavill and I would drop him in the 60s. So I would set the film way back in the past, in the 60s, kind of like The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I don't know if you've seen that, but that was a really good film. You know, the old-fashioned suits, the old-fashioned cars, and they can do that. If you see things like Peaky Blinders and those kind of shows, they can easily recreate the past. But I just think everyone was so anti-Bourne with Craig, you know, oh, it's just a Bourne rip-off, it's a Bourne rip-off. Let's go back to some classic spy, From Russia with Love, you know, those really story-driven kind of Bond films where he's a spy, he needs to do some intelligence, he needs to find out contacts, yeah, he might sleep with the odd woman to get information and kill the odd person because he's an assassin. I think where the franchise went, Bond had a mission, bit different with Craig because he was always just after Blofeld in the end, but he didn't really gather much intelligence as a spy. He kind of just, oh, bang, there you go, done. You know, he'd get a text from M or voicemail from M, or Tanner would contact him. It was, yeah, you know, he'd go and speak to Blofeld a bit and they'd find out that all of a sudden he's got nanobots on him and or things like that. There wasn't any spying. In From Russia with Love, he had to meet a woman, he knew it was going to be a trap, but he had to interrogate her on a boat and he had to do this and do that. He had another villain after him in Red Grant, you know, which was really cool, but he didn't know first of all and all that. I kind of would like to see that. So I think you could pick Cavill up. He's very 60s style anyway. You haven't got all crazy gadgets, so no one can moan about that. You're going to have a really good story, but a written good script, you know, maybe a bit of John Barry coming back, you know, with score-wise, you know, David Arnold can do a lot of Barry-esque kind of scores. So yeah, that's what I'd like to see. And then you can still use a Aston Martin DB5 and things like that as well. So you've still got that kind of Bond 007 history and heritage and look and style, but no one's going to compare it to Mission Impossible, which definitely is going to start happening with the couple of new films that are coming out now.
Who's your number one choice for the next Bond actor?
This is maybe a black sheep answer, but I would really like to see Henry Golding become the next James Bond. So here's my argument why. I know he's not popular, but he's I think his dad's British, mom is Malaysian, I think, and I feel like every film he's been in has been this like little audition to play James Bond. You know, Crazy Rich Asians, it's like the romantic side, so Pierce Brosnan style. We've seen him do action in the G.I. Joe movie. Even The Gentleman too, like they call him like a Chinese James Bond. And that one rom-com movie he did, he does like a Sean Connery impression as well. I think he just has the look. I think it'd be more of like I'd imagine him being more like a Pierce Brosnan type James Bond, a little bit more romantic, more debonair. And he's so suave too, like as a person, like in his media appearances, just so smooth, and I think he'd be a great face for the franchise. And more than just that, I think looking at the like box office numbers of where Bond films do well, it's an international franchise, right? It's like No Time to Die did better everywhere outside of the U.S. more than the U.S. in many ways, even though America is like one of the bigger markets. And I think Golding kind of represents almost like a more globalist future in a way, being an interracial actor, but still very British in many ways. Like, so I think I'd love to see him, but I'm not keeping my hopes up or holding my breath on that one.
So we did a special episode earlier on in the season, Vic, where myself and Andy went through the top 10 bookies' favourites, and then me and Andy picked 2 wild cards, and one of my wild cards were Henry Golding, actually. So I think he'd be a very good choice. You don't see him well, especially over here. I don't know if it's different in the States. You never see his name linked to the James Bond role.
Right, yeah. It's like it's always Henry Cavill. Actually, you know, I recently saw The Night Manager with Tom Hiddleston, and I thought he was quite fantastic there too. I was like, this is also a great James Bond audition, piece as well. So I think he'd be quite good at it as well.
Yeah, for many, many years over here, there's been 2 names synonymous with the Bond, and it's Tom Hardy or Idris Elba. And I think, unfortunately, considering Tom Hardy's now in his 40s and Idris Elba's now in his 50s, that would probably be the argument to say their time has passed. But it's they were always the names, and then, like you said, Henry Cavill, because I think I'm right in thinking when Craig got the role, Cavill was basically second choice, or was the choice but deemed too young at the time, so he was kind of, dare I say, standby. But now he's in his sort of mid-30s, 36, 37. It's probably a good. I mean, I'm 38 myself, so I could put my name forward. But mid-30s is probably a good age, because you've got that experience and that grittiness, but you've also got the youth, so you can take it into the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think at the time, Martin Campbell said Henry Cavill was too pudgy when he was auditioning for James Bond. Like, he wasn't thin enough or shredded enough to play the role, and I think he took that to heart when he did 300 and everything. But I think Tom Hardy, I think he's a fantastic actor, but he's, in my eyes, almost like too rugged to play Bond. I know one of the criticisms of Idris Elba was like he's too street to be Bond, but I feel the same way about Tom Hardy, in so many ways. If anything, I'd say Idris might be a little bit more smoother around the edges than Hardy is, because I feel like every film Hardy's ever been in, he's very tough, and even more of a Russian bodyguard than Daniel Craig ever was. So I don't know, but we'll see. I'm excited. Either way, I think they'll make a good choice.
If you were the producer, Harry, on the next James Bond, and you had the deciding vote, who would you pick to be the next James Bond actor?
Yeah, and it looks like the rumors are in line with Aaron Taylor-Johnson, and I did actually just see him in Bullet Train, in which he was great. But, I would take that with a grain of salt. I believe Sam Worthington was the favorite before Craig was announced, who's, of course, now famous for the Avatar films, right to the point where Barbara Broccoli was supposedly coming to his dressing room to fix him up before his auditions, that he was just the preference going in. And we all know what happened. Daniel Craig got the part. So that's why I'm sort of taking the Johnson rumors with a grain of salt, because the rumors all seem to be backed by the fact that he is Broccoli's favorite when I don't think that means a thing. I think she, is more interested in the good of the franchise going forward than it is, what she likes. And that's why I think the franchise is still running today, because she does a superb job administrating it. Who would I like to see? I've always thought Henry Cavill would be perfect. And I believe when we started talking about doing this podcast, I thought Henry Cavill was going to be a bit busy, but that doesn't seem to be the case, because that's, he's no longer going to be Superman. I think he's also out of The Witcher. So having seen Man from U.N.C.L.E., I think that role would be great. That would be his layer cake. What Layer Cake did for Craig was essentially give him the Bond role. So I think if you take a look at Man from U.N.C.L.E., I mean, Cavill can rock a suit. He's very suave, elegant. I think he would do the part really well. I also think, if they decide to go in this direction, then John Boyega would also be a good choice. He did kind of get sidelined in Star Wars, so why not give him another run at a franchise? I think he'd be a great leading man.
A couple of really good choices there, yeah. And listeners out there, if you haven't heard it, Jay and I did a special Next Bond episode where we talked about some of the bookmakers' favourites and a couple of wild cards that we threw in as well. But yeah, at the time we recorded that, I think Henry Cavill may have been Bookie's favourite. And Aaron Taylor-Johnson didn't get a single mention in that episode because he was on no one's list. Nobody was talking about him. And then all of a sudden he's just appeared out of nowhere. And the rumour mill has taken effect. So interesting that he's there. But Henry Cavill, John Boyega, two very, very good choices in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Just in case you haven't listened to the special episode about James Bond, from memory, Andy, my memory's going all the time here. But from memory, we both picked Richard Madden, didn't we, from memory? What's your thoughts about Richard Madden, Harry?
Yeah, I love Game of Thrones. I think he would be good. I haven't seen a lot of his other stuff besides his turn as one of the Starks, excuse me. So I don't quite know a lot about him. He's also in that show on Netflix.
Bodyguard?
Yeah, that's the one, right? That's who I'm thinking of then in terms of him wearing that sort of elegance in the suit. So yeah, he might be good.
That's the role for me. The role in Bodyguard is the one that kind of made me think he'd be a good Bond, because he's effectively a bodyguard for the Prime Minister. So he's in that kind of government badass type role, and I think he does a great job.
I was going to ask you about who should be the next Bond, but I know previously we've discussed this off air, and you said you're not really fussed, but you're happy to talk about some of the side characters more, which we can pick up later on in the podcast, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I just to reiterate, I just like the whole discussion between about who should be next Bond is so fervent right now, but it's so kind of I feel so saturated by that question, so I'm just not interested in discussing it, or adding to it, because I don't have anything necessarily. I don't have any information or necessarily an insight to give regarding this.
If you were in the casting couch, or one of the producers, who would be your choice?
I really like Henry Cavill. I've seen him in a few different films, but when I saw him in The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and then, was it Mission Impossible Fallout, was it? I was like, yeah, he's got something in him. I could see him as Bond. I don't know if he's as young as they want him to be or not, but I think Aaron Johnson Taylor is great too. I saw him in Bullet Train, so that was fun.
Yeah, and he's emerged as a front runner in recent months. So watch this space, listeners. I think we've mentioned this before when we did our next Bond actor special. It was a name that didn't come up. So he's kind of emerged from the shadows and is maybe leading the race, but we shall find out hopefully sooner rather than later. Moving on to the future then. So obviously we've had 25 films, we've had 6 Bond actors. Daniel Craig has finished his stint as James Bond, and there's various rumours about who the next one might be. Who do you think? My dad pointed at himself. You never know. You never know. I've tried to make a case for me to be the next Bond as well, but Hollywood have not called so far. But are there any actors that you think of that would make a good James Bond, or who do you think should be the next one?
Yeah, there was an actor by the name of Luke Evans, who played Bruce Reynolds in, I think it was a TV film of the Great Train Robbery. Luke Evans. Then there's Tom Hardy, but you see, Tom Hardy is already well known, and that. So there's one or two, but the person who becomes Bond has got to have like a mean streak about him, a mean look about him. Maybe sex appeal. Obviously, he's got to be, 6 foot with a few muscles, and about 13, 14, 15 stone of muscle.
In his 70s, with a moustache. Is this where this is going?
Yeah, hair coming out his ears. Yeah, it's not up to me, but I'd like to see someone like Luke Evans, good actor, portray him. But whoever they pick, that's it. I mean, I didn't believe at the first that Daniel Craig would be a good Bond, but to me, it's turned out the best, just in front of Sean Connery.
There's been a few names linked, in recent years and also in the past. So the likes of Idris Elba has been discussed as a potential Bond actor. Obviously, you mentioned Tom Hardy. One of the big names mentioned at the moment is Henry Cavill, who plays Superman, of course.
Yeah.
And he was apparently close to getting the role when Craig got it, but was deemed too young at the time. But just kind of going off topic a little bit, what about in the past? Are there any actors you think missed out on the part? Like, one that comes to mind for me would be Clive Owen, back when when Brosnan was in charge. Clive Owen seemed to be one linked with the role taken over from Brosnan. I think way back when, but even before Connery got the part, Cary Grant was mooted as a potential actor. Is there any actors over the last 60 years you think either missed out or would have made a good Bond, or a missed opportunity?
Well, it's hard to say. I really couldn't say anybody, because there's not many good actors, and you try and fit them into a role. I don't know. I mean, David Niven, he had that suaveness about him, but would he have made a good Bond? Well, I was a fan of David Niven, and it's hard to picture him playing Bond. But then again,
did David Niven play Bond in the spoof? Was it Casino Royale, 1967?
Yeah. 67, Casino Royale, I think it was. Yeah.
As an unofficial Bond.
Yeah,
so we're not covering that on the main pod because it's not part of the Eon franchise. But it was out the same year as You Only Live Twice.
That's it. Yeah, 67. Yeah.